Okay, so yeah, it looks like we are live. Yep, we are live. Okay, well, hi everybody. Welcome to my live stream. My name is Juan Albarran. Um, and I'm, first of all, I'm not a YouTuber. And English is not my first language, so bear with me here, okay? I'll do my best to keep this entertaining and educational at the same time. So, for those who don't know, who am I? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing a live stream? Okay, so like I said, my name is Juan Albarran. I've been making comics professionally for 9 years now. I worked as an inker for DC Comics for 7 years until 2020. And into 2020, COVID-19 hit, and just like a lot of people lost their jobs, myself included. And I have to rethink what I did for a living. I didn't want to stop making comics, and the American market was being a little bit difficult as far as like finding jobs. Everything was like blocked for a while, and so I decided to go to the only country that no matter what happens, they just never stop making comics, right? Which is Japan. Also, I'm a big manga fan. I think I started reading manga before I started reading comics when I was a kid. And if you ask me how, if I read more manga or comics, I would say more manga in general. So um, the reason why I had not done it before is because basically I just thought that the language would be a big problem, which can be, but I realized later that it's something that you can get over. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. Basically, just a guy making comics here, and because of the circumstances, because I lost my job while doing DC, working for DC Comics, I ended up working for Japan, which is pretty unusual for a Westerner, to work in comics, and especially if you don't live in Japan, which is something that I get asked about a lot. So I worked as an assistant for 2 years, and eventually I realized, which I'll get into during the video, but I realized that there may be a chance that I could work as a manga artist in Japan, or at least I wanted to try, right? So, uh, so yeah, I decided to do it, and of course, for a while, especially while working as an assistant, you just cannot post. I mean, it's a uncredited job, right? Like your name usually doesn't appear anywhere, and it is not my work to post. So it's not my meaning that I cannot go online and social media and post usually a lot of the work that I did as an assistant. So basically, I kind of disappear for a while, right? Like in social media as far as Japan and everything. I mean, as far as posting my work. And then one day I started posting older work, like probably a year into working as an assistant. I started posting like a year old work, which I thought was safe to post. And everybody started kind of like freaking out a little bit because, like I said, it's very unusual that people, from outside of Japan work in Japan. So I started getting a lot of questions. By the way, if anybody's listening, is the sound okay? Is the picture okay? Can you guys hear me okay? Just, you can say something in the comments. Because like I said, this is the first time that I do this. So maybe it's not even like the sound is wrong or something. But anyway, like I was saying, people really got surprised when I said, hey, I'm working for Japanese mangaka as an assistant. And especially later when I managed to find work as a mangaka, people were like, how in the hell did you do that? Like, there's so very few people from outside. There are not Japanese that work as a mangaka in actual Japan. And I got so many messages, like so many like messenger or message requests asking questions, and basically usually the same questions. How did you do it? How do I do it? Like, can you help me? Like, what are the steps that I should take? Things like that. So basically what I decided is I started answering all the questions, but I just didn't have the time. Like, you'll find out later when I explain a little bit of the schedule that I follow, that it's basically impossible to just for me to answer everybody. So I decided, okay, I should probably do a live stream and answer the most common questions that I have. received, and hopefully whenever somebody in the future asks me about this, basically they will just, I can point them to the video, and that will be it. Okay, well, somebody told me that the sound is okay, so great. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. I'm just basically trying to answer the questions that I get from everybody. I'm sorry if I cannot answer all your questions one by one personally, but I work in a weekly magazine right now, and that is pretty insane. And so, I just, I decided to do this. Hopefully it'll be like over in an hour or so. I can answer all the questions. And, if you guys like this live stream and you have extra questions in the future, maybe I can do that. I can do this every once in a while. So anyway, why are we here? We are here because of this. This is Kodansha's morning magazine, number 24. And if you follow me online, you've already seen this cover, because right here, this is my drawing. They announced the beginning of my series, which is called Matagi Gunner. Matagi means hunter, like it's a traditional rural hunter in Japan. Gunner means, just somebody with a gun in English. So, yeah, I don't know how much I should say about the plot or the story, because I want you to read it if you can, or hopefully at some point it will get translated to English or Spanish or any other languages, and you can read the manga. But basically, this is the first chapter. The magazine, the editorial department was very nice, and actually they're really promoting the manga. Usually when they want to promote a story, they put it first in the magazine, and here it is. Here's my name right here. I don't know if you can see it. And they usually promote it adding for the first 4 color pages, which I color myself, which you've probably already seen these on my social media. And fourth color page here. And yeah, and this is the rest of my manga, as you can see. By the way, this is the first panel that I ever drew. Just a fun fact. A hand. Yeah, so this is the manga. And this is one of the many stories that they usually publish in this magazine. A morning magazine for Kodansha is a weekly magazine, which means that every Thursday, once a week, it gets published in Japan. Bunch of manga, all kinds of styles. Famous manga that got published in this magazine, you probably remember Vagabond by Takehiko Inoue. That was published. It's still being published, but it's in hiatus right now. Like, he's not working on the manga. Space Brothers hasn't been translated, but it's a very, very famous manga. Cooking Papa, also a classic, never been translated. So yeah, it's one of the, I would say, one of the biggest or most important manga magazines, seinen manga magazines, which is for young adults. Kind of like shonen manga, which it is published for teenagers, or shoujo manga, which is for girls. So the story is a little bit more adult. It has some action because of some of the plot points that it hits during the, some of the elements that the story has. But for the most part, it's not an action manga. So, I'll just say that the main character is an old man that lost his wife, retired, and an old man who used to be a hunter, right, in the north of rural Japan. And he just, I'm starting to get questions. Okay, this is a Henson asked a question that so many people ask. So Henson, don't worry, I will start answering questions in a few minutes. So anyway, the old man is just the main character, Yamano. It's an old man that lost his wife, retired. He used to be a hunter, and something happens that a new kind of life, appears in his, something is a big change in his life, and the whole story is set in motion. The story, it is not written by me. It is written by a Japanese mangaka called Shoji Fujimoto, Shoji Fujimoto, who also previously published another manga, a fairly long manga, 9 tankobon, for I think Morning 2, which is the monthly version of Morning magazine. So there's Morning, which is weekly, and Morning 2, which is weekly. Okay, so this is the basis of the story, meaning I used to work for American Comics, lost my job. Out of desperation, I went into the internet and tried something that honestly I thought it was not going to be possible, which is working in Japan. But I managed to start working as an assistant, and I got encouraged by that and realized that, okay, I'm going to try to do it as a mangaka. The way that I'm doing it, by the way, it is not the way that I actually thought it would happen, which is with a writer and not with a story of my own. So I was really involved with the creation of the characters but not the story. Like the story itself just comes to me already written, right? So anyway, like I said, I got a few questions, and so I'll just start reading the questions, and I'll give you the answers, and I think that will complete some of the holes that you see in the story, because basically you just have a guy that's not Japanese suddenly publishes in Japan, and he's like, how in the world did that happen? So this is what I'm going to answer. So anyway, first question. Are you living in Japan? How did you get to work as an assistant? I do not live in Japan. I'm from Spain. I live in Barcelona, in Spain. I do not speak Japanese, by the way, which is the second most common question that I get asked. I'm studying, but it's basically near impossible to learn, especially when you are working as a mangaka. So basically it's just, really, really, really difficult. It's a lot of fun though, but really difficult if you don't have a lot of time to study, right? So no, I don't live in Spain. I don't speak Japanese or read Japanese. How did I manage to find work as an assistant? Internet. Japan has internet also, like all the other countries, and for the language, basically I used translation software on the internet, like Google Translate and things like that. So how I found work as an assistant, I saw on Twitter some mangaka I follow retweet somebody, one of his or her friends, I don't remember, a tweet saying I need an assistant. So I went there, I looked it up and applied for the job and got it, because this person, this mangaka, was very interested in working with me, basically because I spoke English and because she was a fan of DC Comics, right? So it was just as stupid as that. And she also saw that I've been working in manga for a while. I mean, making comics for a while. So I thought, okay, this guy has some experience. Whatever he doesn't know, maybe I can teach him, right? So yeah, that's how it started. She spoke English, which made things a lot easier at the beginning. So for about 6 months or so, I worked with her. We did a lot, mostly commercial work. By commercial work, I mean she would get hired by a company and make I remember a company that sold suits and clothing, and they wanted to publish a manga in their website, which is something that they do a lot in Japan. They use manga for basically everything, advertising, and just, aside from the manga magazine publishing, they do a lot of other things. And so yeah, she had 4 or 5 projects going on at the same time. This with the company that sold suits. She had something about the customer was a YouTuber, and they wanted to make some kind of flash moving kind of thing. But anyway, the basis of it was I did a lot of backgrounds, but also a lot of color. Like it was supposed to be like coloring anime style, like very simple, just basic color, shadows and highlights, and that was about it. So that lasted for about 6 months until this mangaka fell ill because I don't know, we were connected in Discord all the time. When I was working, she never slept. I just like she was available all the time. So I think she got sick from so much working, right? And so yeah, eventually she told me, hey, I got sick. I need surgery. She didn't specify what happened, but I basically was out of a job for a while. So we went back to square one, and I started looking for a job again on the internet, and found one. I found work with one mangaka who's uh, more a little bit better known, Masamichi Sato, and he's well known because he's manga quality assurance in another world, I think it's called. It's been translated to English right now by Kodansha, so you can find it in Comixology. You can find it in many other places. I don't think it's been sold on print, but it's been sold digitally. So he saw my work that I had done for this other mangaka that was sick, and he said, okay, just work with me. So I worked with him for a while. He liked my work and my work ethic. Basically, I would just do whatever he asked me to do, and never complain. And if we agreed on a day, well, just be there and do the work. And so basically, he started recommending me for other people, for other mangaka. Like he had a friend of his ask, hey, I need an assistant. Do you know anybody? So he would ask me, do you know anybody? I mean, do you need more work? And I said, yes. So he started finding me more work. He introduced me to Hanada Rio, who is also fairly famous, I think. Devil's Line being published in America, and actually here in Spain too, I think. And also Blackguard, which is the latest manga she completed. Now she's in Devil Line 2, like the sequel. And and again, the same thing. Like with her, I worked with for her husband also for a while, and they would introduce me to other people. It looked like most of the time people from Kodansha, the Kodansha morning, afternoon, evening, which is like the name of their magazines. They basically would do the same, just around that they would give me work. The word got around that I was reliable and that I did decent work. So, I was never out of work from that point. So that was a really long answer, but are you living in Japan? How do you get work in assistant? I think that that answers that. Another question, when making the live stream, can you walk us through everything you did from creating the manga to taking it to the publishers and what they said? Okay, I think this assumes that the manga Matagi Gunner, this one here from Morning, that I wrote it. And like I said, I didn't. But I did send, oh, by the way, I didn't say it, but let me promote a little bit of shameless self-promotion here. I have a Patreon. You can find the link on the description box. And I say this because in the Patreon, I've been posting for the last few months a lot of what I'm going to talk about here, which is the one-shot manga that I submitted to publishers, the process of how I did it, all of that stuff. I think it's fairly cheap. You can go to Patreon and you can check it out if you want to. I will talk about it now, but I actually published the manga, translated to English, so you can read it if you want to read it. And I detail everything, and you can see some of the process behind it. And also, I talk about some of my experiences with Japanese editors, because I'm working for manga for a Morning here, but I've had dealings with other editors from another magazines before this happened. So, making a manga. So I'm working as an assistant, and at some point I decide that I see that with the translation software, it is possible to work in Japan. Like the communication is fluid. They give me instructions. I understand the instructions. We can talk. Of course, talk meaning write. Like, of course, we cannot talk like I'm talking now because I don't speak Japanese. But I said, okay, maybe it is possible. Maybe I'm just telling myself that it's impossible to publish in Japan, but maybe with, these new technologies, maybe I can do it. So what I did is I had a story, and again, this is what I talk about in my Patreon. I had a story that I had in my head for a long time. So I decided to write the story, and I wrote it basically like in a page in a Word document, like a plot. Like if I was explaining the story to you right now, like, oh, so this guy goes here and this happens and blah blah blah. So that's how I wrote it. From there, I went and did the Nemo, which is the name, the storyboard, so to speak. And from there, I just drew the whole thing. I drew I was doing this while I was working all my assistant work. So basically, I would have maybe a day here, a day there. Like whenever I had time, I would just work on my story. When it was finished, I took it to a friend that I have in Japan. And I said, can I pay you some money? And you take this text in English and you translate it to Japanese. And here's the manga. And can you do this? And he said, yes, I can do that for you. So this friend of mine translated all the dialogue. He made it sound like, I guess Japanese people would say those things. And then, because I don't know how to write Japanese, and even if I can copy and paste the text, I don't know if I'm breaking the sentences in the wrong place or not. What I did is I asked some of the mangaka that I work for and asked, do you know any assistant that can help me with adding the text to my manga? I would pay that. So I just hired an assistant myself, and I basically had him place all the text in the right places with the right grammar and everything. And so the manga was finished. Basically, I drew the whole thing, and somebody translated and somebody helped me with add the text to the final pages, and that was it. That was how I did it. Then, how do I take this manga to the publishers? Well, this again, common sense. Like I thought, okay, these publishers, these magazines, probably have websites, right? So what I did is I looked for a list, and you can go to Wikipedia and look for this thing. There's a list of magazines that are currently active in Japan. And you go and you see the list of all the names, and you find their websites. And in most every website, they have like a link or instructions on how to submit your work there. So that's what I did. Like I have my manga translated to Japanese. All the magazines that accepted submissions via internet, I'll just send it to them. And I got actually a lot of feedback from that, surprisingly. Also, I have to remember, we're talking about 2020, something like that. The world was closed because of COVID, which was a horrible thing, but in some sense it was an advantage for me, because a lot of publishers in Japan, which are used to do these submissions face to face, like somebody would go to their office and say, hey, here's my manga. What do you think about it? So they stopped doing that face to face because of the coronavirus restrictions. So a lot of the companies is like open a website, a tab in their website where you could, send your manga there. So that was really helpful. Of course, you have to face endless websites written in Japanese. And there's no way around that. So you have to translate all these, again, with internet or software translators. But this is the main difficulty, I think, when trying to do this thing of publishing in Japan, which is you're facing emails and websites and instructions and everything all in Japanese. If you can get around that, which is not easy, then you should be okay. But yeah, I send the manga. I send it to a lot of publishers. Almost all of them answered. They're so polite. 80% of them, and I'm talking about maybe 20 or 30 people, got back to me counting everything. Some of them is like, hey, this is not our genre of manga we do. This is for shonen, and the story you're sending is for adult readers, not for us, Some would offer really constructive criticism, like, hey, this is really cool, but you could do this or do that. Also, keep in mind that the story that I sent was mostly based on the world of high school baseball, which is something very, very Japanese. If you, I don't know, Ace of the Diamond, maybe that manga, but that's the kind of world that the story was set in. So they were really surprised that somebody from outside of Japan would send them a manga based on a very Japanese thing. And because I read about it a lot, I think it was well, documented and everything. So yeah, so they read it, and one of them actually, one editor, the editor for Morning, actually liked it so much that decided to submit it to the monthly newcomer award that they have, which is the way it works in Japan. You send a one-shot story, you send it to the publisher. The publisher gives usually monthly or bi-monthly awards, and the people that get the prizes usually are like, okay, now we're interested in your work. Let's see if we can make something happen, right? So that's what I was trying to do. They asked me, are you okay with us submitting your story for the publisher? I'm sorry, for the contest. And I said yes. So they sent it to me, and they sent it to them. And a couple months later, they told me that I did not win, mostly because of my age. Apparently, they look for people that are a lot younger than me, but they liked it. And even though I have no confirmation, I think in the end, sending that manga and having worked for so many Japanese mangaka that work for Kodansha was a little bit of a, like the whole thing, like my name was around the offices of Morning for a while already. So I think that helped when it came time to work on Matagi Gunner, the manga that I'm working on right now. So yeah, basically, and I think this answers also Henson, do you think you should understand Japanese? He has this in the comments, to publish your manga in Japan. You do not, obviously. I don't understand Japanese and I'm working on it, but you have to deal with Japanese. You cannot expect almost anybody to speak English or anything. Like, I'm really lucky. One of my editors speak a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of English, and we can communicate like that. But 90% of the communication is done by email in Japanese. So basically, I get an email, I copy, paste, put it in a translator, see what it is, and reply in the same thing. I type my reply in English or Spanish, and then copy and paste the translation, send it over. The same with the manga, by the way. I work with a Soji Fujimoto, who's the writer. They send me the manga, the script and everything. They send it to me in Japanese, so I have to translate line by line of all the dialogue, and so figure out what the manga is about. Why do I say that you don't have to understand Japanese, but you have to deal with it? Is that almost nobody speaks Japanese in English. Japanese speaks English in Japan, but not only that, but you cannot expect an editor. I mean, unless you're insanely good at making comics. You have to understand that Japan is full of mangaka. They are amazing at what they do. And why would they make their work so much harder and deal with somebody that don't speak their language or is not willing to deal with Japanese when they can do their life so much easier and just hire somebody from Japan? I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but just put yourself in their shoes. You get a manga, a one shot that's all in English, in a email that's like says, hey, hello, here's my work, blah, blah, blah. Can you take a look at it, give me some feedback? You write it all in English or Spanish or French or whatever. And you're a editor, like in Morning, let's say. They deal with weekly deadlines. They have like so many pages and so many manga and so many things to do. And now they get an email of a person in a language they don't understand. What do you think they're going to do? Probably not read it or delete it or reply maybe and say, hey, thank you, but no, or something like that. So my advice, and I think this is a necessity, even if you don't speak Japanese, the manga you send to Japanese publisher has to be in English. I'm sorry, in Japanese. Otherwise, I don't think you have a chance. Even if your manga is insanely good, maybe they would think that the process is very difficult. And also keep in mind that, culturally, the way the Japanese work is very, they have their own way of doing things. And they don't really deviate too much. Like, this is how we do it. You either get, with us and do it the same way we do it, or we're not doing it with you at all. So that's my advice. Basically, you do not have to understand it. I think it helps, and that's why I'm studying. Um, but you have to deal with Japanese. Like, I cannot tell how many hours of translating emails or translating websites or translating instructions or translating script I've spent to get where I am right now. Okay. Okay. So another question. If I may ask you, how did you contact this Japanese editorial? Because my dream is also to be published in a Japanese magazine. Do not give up on your dreams, of course. Here I am living proof that it's possible. How this thing came out, it's actually a lot different than I expected. Like, I've already explained the background of me working for a lot of people for Kodansha. I send my manga to several magazines, some of them in Kodansha, like Evening, Morning, and I had the contest that I didn't win, Afternoon, which is another magazine. So I think my work had already been floating around the Kodansha offices. Okay, I have a question about assistance, so I will answer that next. So how did I contact this? The Morning. That was actually, I didn't contact them. They contacted me. And here's the what you need to know about my. If you need to learn something about my experience, is that being professional in having good work ethics in the end pays off in one way or another. The story is this: behind my back, without me knowing, Masamichi Sato, the mangaka that I mentioned before, because he liked my work, recommended me and mentioned my name in a conversation with his editor. His editor said, "Hey, we're getting ready to do a manga, Matagi Gunner, and we need an artist because the guy who's writing it doesn't have the time to do all the work in a weekly schedule." So he said, "Do you know any artist?" So the manga Sato sensei decided to just like, "Hey, I know this guy. This may sound crazy, but he's a guy from Spain. He doesn't speak Japanese at all. He lives in Spain, but he does with good work. And I already talked to him about it, by the way, that I wanted to publish in Japan. I asked him his opinions and then my work and all that, right? So yeah, he said my name to the editor, and I didn't know anything about this. Apparently, a few days later, I got an email from them. Say, "Hey, my name is so and so. We're getting ready to do this story. We need an artist. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Of course, yes." So that's the way it worked for me. Of course, this is the same editorial group that already saw my manga with the contest, because the Morning manga contest that I didn't win because I was too old, apparently. All the editors vote on the manga. So again, my name had been there already, and I'm sure that like everybody was so surprised that somebody that's not from Japan would send them work, that I'm pretty sure that people noticed over there. Like the editors were like, "Oh, somebody that's outside of Japan sends something here." Like, so anyway, I'm pretty sure that when Sato Sensei already mentioned my name, they were like, "Oh yeah, we've seen work from this guy before, right?" So yeah, they sent me an email. But this is a bit of an exception, because the answer to this question is work as an assistant and spend some time learning how things work over there. And once you learn how things work over there, then you can, these kind of things may happen, or maybe, I don't know, you just meet people. Maybe you meet editors that way. Like you never know what happened. Like if you do a good job, you're going to be in demand, obviously, because there's a lot of people that, they're not professional out there and do not do a great job. So, yeah, just it was having a reputation of being just reliable and being honest with my work, right? So yeah, that's basically it. But my main recommendation, aside from being an assistant, which is already difficult and not very well paid, and it's not ideal as a job, would be just find the websites of all the magazines, just see what they request. Like some have like page limits. You have to have a manga that's no longer than 34 pages, black and white, whatever, and just send them your work and see what happens. That's basically what I did before I was recommended by Sato Sensei. Basically, I just sent my work out there, and actually, I got to work with another assistant from, I'm sorry, for another editor from another magazine, Hanato Yume, which is a shoujo manga, and they saw my work. I sent them the baseball manga that I did. They were like, "Hey, this has nothing to do with us, but it's really cool that this is a really good story, and it's really cool that you're from Spain. Like, we don't have anybody that has your background. Do you want to try to work with us?" And I decided, yeah, I'm going to give it a try. So yeah, I worked for a month or so with him, and I did like the Nemo, like I wrote a story for a shoujo manga, and did the whole storyboard and worked with this editor for a month, and then the story got rejected by the editor-in-chief of the magazine for some reason, right? So yeah, like I got experiences just by sending the work, and if your work is good, people will pay attention, I think, one way or another. And yeah, so again, it's this story, the story of this editor with the Sojo manga magazine. It's all in my Patreon. So if you go to my Patreon and sign up, you will get the manga, you get all the explanation, all the details, all the pictures, all the everything. Anyway, weekly deadlines, Henson asks in the comments, is tight. So do you work with assistants? I do work with assistants. I actually have 3. I have an army of assistants. 2 of those assistants are from Japan. 1 is from Spain, a friend of mine. And the reason why I have 3, and this, by the way, was not, I didn't decide this. It was recommended by Kodansha Morning because they have experience doing this. And they said, okay, it's probably a good idea that you have 3 for various reasons. One, I think the most important is if you have only 1 assistant and that assistant gets sick, you're in trouble. Also, there's a lot of pages. Like usually every chapter has, I've done from 20 until 28 pages per chapter, which is insane. So I cannot rely on one person to do everything in the time that I needed them to do. So I spread the word in different, to different people. Like some of the assistants are better at, I don't know, vegetation. Some are good at architecture. Some are good at food, which, in manga, there's a lot of food in their drawing. So depending on what the story needs, I'll just go and give the work to whoever I think is going to do a better job. So yeah, assistants. If manga, especially weekly magazine and manga, it's not possible without assistants, I think. I mean, unless you can do, by the way, my schedule is this. I publish 3 weeks in a row. 4th week, there's no Matagi Gunner in the magazine. And then, I start the following week. So basically every 4 weeks, we have to publish 3 chapters, which is a minimum of 60 pages, maybe more. Like out of this, I'm working on chapter 6. Out of the 6, 4 have had more than 20 pages. This chapter here, first one, 44 pages. It's so long. It took me forever. 44 pages. So, yeah, assistants. And one of the reasons why I chose 2 Japanese assistants is because a big part of this manga happens in rural traditional Japan. So there's a lot of details that I just wouldn't know unless, it's a cultural thing. Like a lot of things that if they tell me to do it, I'll probably do them wrong. So I just ask the assistants to make it authentic. And that's a comment actually that I've been getting a lot. It's like, hey, this is so Japanese. How do you know so much about Japan? It's like, well, first of all, the story is already written. So if they tell me, okay, here's I don't know, whatever it is, that it's typical food of Japan or typical something, and I ask the assistants to draw it or ask to the editors for advice. So then, we get it right. So anyway, next question. Well, here's one that I already answered, which is, did you write in Japanese or did they translate the manga themselves? And I assume they talk about either about the one shot that I sent or this manga. Again, this manga I don't write, so it's already written in Japanese by Fujimoto-san. The one shot that I did, again, I repeat, it's already, I mean, I hire somebody to translate it. So, but again, I would never submit a manga written in another language that is not Japanese. Japanese is famous for, again, like Spain. Like here, you come here to Spain and you get out of the tourist areas, almost nobody speaks good English. In Japan, it's the same thing. So yeah, don't expect anybody in Japan knowing English. And even if they know English, they may know a little bit. But what the answer that I got is, like, I actually had this answer from a couple of editors. Said, if you don't speak Japanese, I cannot work with you because I need to have really detailed and nuanced conversations about the story, about what happens here, the expression. I need this character to, to have this expression or this look in their eyes or something like that. And that requires that one of us, I mean, both of us speak the same language and we are very fluent at it. Like otherwise we're going to have misunderstandings constantly about, so yeah, don't expect, maybe you find somebody that speaks English. I'm not saying that there's nobody, but don't expect that. Just make it easy on the editor that whoever receives the manga, like, oh, somebody from America, somebody from Spain, somebody from France. And then they read it and it's in Japanese. They will be pleasantly surprised that you went through the trouble and work and paid the money to get the manga in Japanese so they can read it, right? They will appreciate that. They are really into that kind of thing. Okay. What was the thing, another question, by the way, what was the thing that the editors found in your manga pitch and they decide to publish it? Is the manga you publish your initial idea you pitch, or did you change it according to the editor's notes? That's a very long question. And again, if you, I think this person is assuming that the first chapter of Matagi Gunner was my idea, which was not. So if I talk about my experience with the one shot that I did, I basically did all by myself. What did they see that they like? Well, first of all, they were really surprised that I'm not Japanese, right? Like that's the first thing. They don't get a lot of emails or work submitted from people from outside, I think, or that's the impression that I got. They were also surprised by the fact that I tackle a very Japanese subject. Like high school Japanese baseball is something that is not very well known outside of Japan. Maybe outside of Ace of Diamond manga or something like that. Koshin, by the way. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. So they were surprised that I made a manga about that and that it looked okay. Somebody said like, "Oh, you really researched this thing." It's like, well, I just know about it. I like it. I follow it. So, so they liked that it was authentic, even though it was not written by somebody that was Japanese. It sounded like, okay, you tackle a very Japanese subject, and it looked and sounded authentic. Did I change it according to my editor notes? I didn't change it to anybody. I didn't make any changes to this manga, to this one shot, because nobody offered to publish it. Meaning, I did the work, and the only person that got interested in working with me, well, two of them. One is the one from Morning that submitted to the award, and that said, okay, I'm going to submit it like this. He had some feedback, like he said that the ending was too abrupt, like, okay, we're just doing this thing, building up, and suddenly, boom, the ending, right? He said that it looked a little bit strange. And the second one was the one from the Shoujo Manga magazine. And so, of course, it was not a Shoujo Manga magazine's type of story at all. So he wasn't interested in that story. He was interested in writing something together. In that sense, that's when I worked with him. And then yes, I changed. Like I came up with a story, I sent it to him, he would give me feedback, and I would change. And we did that like 3 or 4 times. So basically, we worked for a few weeks in the Nemo of this manga. That it's actually again self promotion here. It's in my Patreon. I detail the whole process and actually publish the actual manga with the actual Nemo or storyboard that I did. And yeah, in that sense, he was involved in everything. He was involved in the design of the characters. He was involved in the story. He was actually very good. Like, I would have liked to work with him because every comment he made, I got the feeling that he improved the manga. Like, and it's not that he told me do this. He would tell me there's something missing. Like, I don't understand the reaction of the character, or the turning point of the character here. Like, it's supposed to be the big moment. I don't. Whatever's happening in the story is not big enough to change the life of the person or make the person, turn around. And so it forced me to dig deeper. It's like, okay, I need to give it, the character a stronger motivation, or something's missing here. So it was really, really good the way the way he would push me to, to make the story a little bit better, right? So in that sense, I would think that if somebody sends a one shot and he gets approved and says like, okay, we're going to work with you, it is very unlikely, I think, that they will publish it just like that. Just my experience with the morning editorial department here is that they ask for a lot of changes, and they try to make the manga perfect. Even in a way, it was a little bit of a surprise for me. It's, I thought, okay, it's a weekly schedule. We have to go really fast. They're going to approve almost everything as it is. I was completely wrong. Like, they don't compromise. That's another thing. Like, not only you have to be ready to to deal with Japanese all the time, you have to be ready to work nonstop in your manga. Like, I didn't do anything else. Like, somebody asked me, how many hours do you work? Like, all of them. I just wake up, work, go to the gym. That's the only rest that I have. Work out a little bit, come back and work until I go to sleep again. Sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning. Like, it's just insane. And most of the time, I'm not actually drawing. I'm actually making changes. It's a lot of tweaking. A lot of the expression is not right. Like the little details that you would think, okay, the reader is going to read this in 2 seconds. It's not going to pay attention. They do pay attention to it, and they want it to be perfect. Like, I cannot tell you how shocked and frustrated and everything I was with chapter 1, because they wanted to be perfect. It's the entrance, the entrance door, the front door of the manga to everybody, right? Like, this is the first thing they read, so they wanted to be perfect. And so, yeah, they did not compromise. It took us like 7 rounds of changes, I think, of the pages. The Nemu itself, the storyboard, went through like 5 or 6 rounds. Like, insane. Like, email after email with PDFs full of like, change this, change that, like red circles and explanations about what to change. So you have to be ready for that. Otherwise, this is probably not going to work. By the way, if you have any questions, like, I will probably be finishing this in 10-15 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, just drop in the comments and I will get to them. I have one more question here. From another reader that I think this person asked me to do this, asked me this in my Patreon. It's a very interesting question, and I hope, anyway, here's the question. I want to be mangaka doing everything by myself because I'm all about the integrity of the artist. Is it possible to draw my manga for Japanese magazine like Shueisha or Kodansha remotely as a foreigner? Okay, two parts of this question. Is it possible to draw my manga for Japanese magazine from outside of Japan? Obviously, yes. I'm here. I'm doing it. I'm a bit of an exception. I have to say, there's He's publishing for Akita Shoten, I think, with Team Phoenix. He's doing like Osamu Tezuka characters. There is Boichi. Boichi, he's Korean, but he lives in Tokyo, I think. So yeah, I mean, there are some foreign people, from foreigners working for Japan, but living outside of Japan, I don't think there's that many. I mean, I can tell you this: whenever I was being set up in the editorial morning magazine department, they asked me for a lot of papers, like for taxes, for payments, for information, and they even apologized. They said, "I'm sorry that we keep asking you for papers, but basically this is the first time that we work with somebody outside of Japan and that lives outside of Japan." And you have to realize that morning magazine has been around for, I think, since 1980 something. I think this year, I think 82, I think it's the 40th anniversary of the magazine, which means in 40 years I'm the first not Japanese, or the first non-Japanese resident they work with, which is insane in my opinion, that they, that it's me. But anyway, that's a whole different story. So it is possible, but it's not easy, I guess. I don't know how open they are. I think obviously they are open to do it because they, agreed to work with me. But, and I still, one day I'll go to Japan and have dinner with them. And after I pay for a few drinks for them, I will ask them, why did they choose me? Because I'm not sure. I think it has to do with the fact that I already been working for a Japanese mangaka for 2 years. And maybe they thought that I would endure the, I don't want to say the abuse, but they know that they ask for a lot of questions, and their way of working is very particular. They ask for changes, and it's not easy to work in this type of environment. So because I had been doing it already, I think maybe they thought, okay, maybe he can do it. Also, I think for Japanese people, the fact that very few people has worked there as a mangaka, the fact that somebody from outside of Japan does it, maybe it's like a selling point for them. I also think that maybe thought like, oh, we're doing something that very few people are doing here in Japan, which is working with somebody that's from outside of Japan. So yeah, is it possible? Of course it's possible. But again, what I did was a little bit of like the planets aligned, a lot of coincidences, and it basically happened. But of course, I was trying for 2 years, or at least a year and a half, me drawing the manga and sending it to publishers and all those things. But that doesn't mean that it will happen. I mean, I don't know why they decided to go with me, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to submit manga to them. So, I will, at some point I will talk to them, and when I meet them face to face with the editors and get more information about that. But right now I'm just not sure. And now there's the second question, or the first question, when he said, I want to be a mangaka and do everything by myself because I'm all about the integrity of the artist. And this person already asked me the same question before, I think on Facebook, and he said that he wanted to do everything himself. He was very into, like, I want to do everything myself, otherwise it's like the quality of the work is not the same. I'm going to challenge that idea. I just really don't agree with, let's just put Matagi Gunner, my manga, as an example. I can do some things. I mean, I can draw everything, but not everything equally well. There's some things that I'm better at, some things that I'm not really good at. Things that I'm good at: architecture, perspective, buildings, rooms, tables, chairs, all these kinds of things. Mechanical things, I think I'm actually decent at it. Things that are a little bit more difficult for me are nature. Like architecture that is not like present day. Like I really like to draw like present day Japan, for instance, but if you ask me to draw castles or medieval rooms and things like that, that is a lot more difficult, which is funny because as an assistant, I did that for 2 years almost, but it was difficult for me. So if I'm drawing my manga, which again, the main character is a hunter that's in rural Japan. There's a lot of vegetation. There's a woods. There's a lot of animals. There's a lot of things that I have to draw or that appear in my manga. So if I hire an assistant that's better than me at that, the quality of the manga is not compromised. It's actually improved. And so I would encourage this person, if you watch this, that think hard about what integrity means. Personally, when I do a manga, and I can tell you that whenever the editors in Japan work a manga, they're not thinking about you, or I mean, I don't want it. I don't want this to sound like, they are rude or anything, but their priority is to write a manga that the readers are going to enjoy. Plain and simple. If the mangaka does everything or not important. Oh, by the way, I got a Marco arrived late. I hope you could re-upload this later. I think it will. This is the first time doing this. It should get uploaded automatically. I'm not sure, but yeah, hopefully it will get uploaded and automatically, I think. But anyway, going back to the question, the editor, all they care about is about the fact that the manga is good and it gets delivered on time. If you, the person who sent me this question, you can do, let's say you work for Morning Magazine, you can do 20 to 25 pages every week, or 3 chapters in 4 weeks by yourself. And keep in mind, I'm not writing the story. Many people are publishing in this magazine are actually writing the story and drawing it, which is insane in my opinion. If you're able to do everything by yourself, good for you. Like, awesome. I think you would lose your mind, or the quality of your manga will actually be worse, because even though you do it all by yourself, you have to do it so quickly that you have to end up compromising the quality because of the deadline, right? So personally, I think the integrity would be something that I would not, encourage if I was a Japanese. I mean, in the integrity of the way this person understands it, which is doing everything by themselves. If I was an editor in Japan, I would go like, no. You need an editor because I need you to, like, if you do 50% of the drawing, I need that 50% to be awesome. And then the people, the assistants, one or many, that are doing the other 50, it has to be awesome too. If you do 100%, it's not going to be awesome. It's going to be so, because you have to rush it, right? So, which is better? I don't know. Do you want to do it all by yourself just to say you did it by yourself? Or do you want to provide the best quality manga that you can for the reader, which is the important thing. The person who reads, who pays the bills, so to speak, is the reader. If the reader buys your manga, pays the bills for the magazine and pays the bills for you. And so they are the ones we all have to be thinking about. It's not so much, I think, about us, especially me. Like, think about it. I was an assistant for 2 years. I have a very specific way of doing everything, like when I draw. And then I hire people that do things differently, like very differently. So, and I almost never ask for changes when I get work from the assistants, because this is not about me. This is about the story. And I take a step back and think, okay, this person drew the woods in a way that I would have, or this house or whatever, in a way that I would have never done it. But does it work for the story? Yes. Okay, then there's no reason to change it, right? So it's not about so much. I mean, in a way, I have to make those decisions because it's my name in the manga, and I hired these assistants, so I have to give them instructions. And in the end, the look of the manga, it's what I decide it is. So I'm a little bit of an art director in that sense, a little bit, like I have to decide the way the manga looks. But the editors don't ask me, like, did you do it by yourself? They know, of course, that I'm working with assistant, but they don't say, oh, this is really cool. Did you do it, or did the assistant do it? They don't care. They just say, hey, this page is good, or this page is... Again, they don't care. They don't care if it's the assistant or if you did it by yourself. There's a few people that actually work by themselves, I think, Um, one is Naoki Urasawa. He works by himself now, I think, because with COVID-19, I got another comment. I'll read it right now. COVID-19, I think he stopped working with assistants or asking his assistants to come to the studio. So the latest work that he's doing, Asadora, he did all by himself, which is great. But you have to keep in mind that Naoki Urasawa, there's only one. He's one of the biggest stars in Japan right now as far as manga goes. He has power that we do not, like people that just start working now, and also his manga doesn't get published regularly. Like he publishes in Big Spirits, I think, Shogakukan publisher, and he does like a few chapters and then he stops because he needs the time to work on it. Big Spirits, the editorial department, they allow him to do that only because he's Naoki Urasawa. But we are not Naoki Urasawa, so I think we have to go into the whole thing, thinking that we have to adapt to the way they work, not expect them to change their ways, so they can adapt to the way we work. So this person, he said, like, do you think, in a previous message I remember now, he said, do you think that Japanese publishers would be okay would adapt the publishing schedule for me? And I would say, I don't know, because I haven't asked them, but my guess is no. I don't think they would do it because, again, they have a gazillion mangakas in their own, country that they will look for their own, they would work with assistants and meet the deadlines and do whatever they ask them. So whenever somebody from the outside, again, if you're an amazing artist and you're a big star, maybe you can come with some conditions, but I don't think so. But again, I don't know. I just don't think so. Anyway, add another question here. After I complete my manga, where should I contact to get checked whether producers will publish it or not? How do I get a check? Is there any email or such kind of things? T. Sanio asks in the comments. If you go back to the email, to the video after I uploaded it, after it gets uploaded, you will get the answer to this. But just in case it doesn't get uploaded correctly, I'll answer this again. Once you complete your manga, how do you get it checked by somebody? You really don't get it checked by anybody. Meaning, like, you have to, complete it. You have to translate it to Japanese, like I mentioned before. And once the manga is ready, the manga has to be ready. Has to be ready for a Japanese publisher to read it and go like, I like this, I don't like this. They have to be able to make the decision. If you send it in another language that it's not Japanese, or you send it, I don't know, like the manga here and then a Word document with the translation or something strange like that, that's not really going to work. Like, you have to send them the complete, you have to make things easier for themselves. Where do you send it? Is there like an email or something? Well, yeah, like I said before, there's some work that you have to do. Like, remember that you're dealing with Japanese publishers. They'll have Japanese websites, have websites that are in Japanese, which it's what really makes things difficult. You have to deal with a lot of Japanese here. And if you don't know Japanese, you just have to use online or internet software that translate Japanese into your own language. Is there an email? There's not one email, but every here's the thing. You look for the magazine you want to submit your work to. Go find their website. They all have a website. And in all their websites, they have a tab, a link, or a place like where you can click and get instructions on how to send them your work. They are no different than any other publisher of manga in any other place in the world. Actually, I think that if there is one type of publisher that encourages more than any other submissions and new work and new talent and new working with new people, is the Japanese publisher. I'm not too familiar with French publishers, but I'm really familiar with American publishers. And to deal with Marvel, DC, and Dark Horse and all those, it's sometimes difficult to find, like online, where to send them work. Sometimes it's just you do it in conventions or word to mouth, or you find out the contact on how to send work by a friend. Some friend tells you the contact name or something. In Japan, they are so open to work with everybody that they put it on their website. So they have a section. Where they give you instructions. They give you an email address. Sometimes they give you a link when you click, and then you can just upload the files directly. There's all kinds of. They're really, really, really open to work with you. But again, it has to be all in Japanese. Matagi Gunner for the win. Thank you, Daniel. He's a master inker, working for DC Comics, and Frank Miller right now, by the way. Dalit Enriquez here watching. Thank you for stopping by. So that's an hour and 6 minutes. I think that is it. I answered all the questions that I got. I think I explained everything that I wanted to explain. If you have any questions, I'll give you a couple more minutes. If you like this, I may do this in the future. Remember again that I have a Patreon. It's on the description box, where I detail all that I do. I actually post all the sketches. Like for Matagi Gunner here, I did 70 something sketches, I think, of all the pages, 70 something pages of sketches of all the characters. Because I would send characters like, okay, the old man, this guy that you see here, I drew him about 60, 70, over 100 times, I think, because they wouldn't approve anything. They're just the way it is. It took me like 2.5 months, I think, of drawing the same character over and over again. Again, like I said, they don't compromise. They just want it to be perfect. So you just keep going until you get it perfect. I have all that in my Patreon. You just can go down if you want to support me. Like, working for Japan is a dream and a nightmare come true all at once. Like, I'm a slave working. Like, I should be working right now. But I did this a little bit of a break to talk about it, the whole thing, and answer your questions. So if you want to support, if you see this, live in Japan, read the manga and enjoyed it, you can use your support. And if you read this, you watch this and want to know more in detail and see the sketches and see the Nemus and see the process, see everything, then you can basically just go into my Patreon and you'll see it. So anyway, if you watch this, have any more questions, just drop them in the comments. If I get enough questions and people want to know something more that I haven't talked about in this live stream, I'll just do another in a month or two. I don't know. Anyway, Jock Comics, thank you for this. Again, I'm sorry if you send me a message on Facebook or Instagram and I didn't reply to you. So many people ask me the same questions that I ended up not being able to respond to everybody. But this was fun. I hope you found it useful, and I will talk to you all very soon. Okay, bye bye.